Hello, this video is in response to my environmental science assignment of reviewing a book related to an environmental topic of my choosing. The book I chose to review is 6 Degrees, Our Future on a Hotter Planet by Mark Lynas. The book talks about potential consequences of having the average temperature on Earth increase from 1 degree Celsius to 6 degrees Celsius. All the information in this book is based on enormous amounts of data, scientific studies, and models and predictions. One statistic that this book um, starts off is that 90% of our energy starts off as a fossil fuel. Um, and if you think about it, it adds up quickly and it releases enormous amounts of CO2 into our atmosphere. And as the author points out, this is the reason why we have um, why we have drastically changed our environment. As the author points out, um, we have always the Earth's history has always had fluctuations in temperature. Um, there's been cold eras, there's been hot eras. The biggest difference is that occurred over thousands of years, and the fluctuations in temperature that we are seeing today, they are occurring over decades, and if not years. And that is truly alarming that we can have an impact on our weather in such a short amount of time when it has taken thousands of years throughout history for that to occur. At our current temperature change, we have changed the average temperature of Earth 0.7 degrees Celsius. Um, Accordingly, we have already seen changes in our environment, and as we can see, we are experiencing droughts and fires and melting glaciers already at this point. And the author likes to start off by explaining the consequences of each degree. So at 1 degrees, as I mentioned, we're almost already there, and you'll see more drought and just less glaciers. At 2 degrees, we start to see a tipping point in which more and more glaciers disappear. We have rising tides, and it has a profound impact on our coral reefs. Coral reefs are important for millions of species. They help reduce CO2 emissions by filtering out that CO2. But too much CO2 causes coral reefs to die and bleach out. At 3 degrees, we start to see more deadly consequences, and not just to other species, but to humans. Human-related deaths in terms of climate change can consist of dying from heat, dying from severe cold, like winter, as well as from other catastrophic events like major hurricanes and tornadoes and fires. And at 3 degrees, we are likely to have this extreme weather occur slightly more frequently. It will dry out our rainforest, which is extremely important because, as we all know, trees filter out CO2. as well. They also um, inhabit thousands of species as well. Um, at 4 degrees, um, we will see a major water source dry up completely. Um, that is the Ganges River in India, um, which reaches 1 billion people. Um, and it's a major issue to have resources not available to millions of people because that can cause all types of consequences. Obviously, as we have people trying to survive and look for these resources, which can create a lot of conflict. Um, we will also see infrastructure underwater, like the subway in New York, at 4 degrees warmer on average. That everything underground would be inundated. Um, and big cities like New York could probably combat that because they have the resources. But other countries that are poorer, they're really going to struggle. Um, and in some cases, they are going to succumb to the climate change and rising sea levels and can't really do anything about it like bigger countries like us, like the US, can. At 5 degrees, we see disaster scenarios, um, which will create uninhabitable zones. It will increase, majorly increase the frequency of extreme weather. It will severely affect people's ability, as I mentioned before, to obtain clean water. Um, and at 6 degrees Celsius, hotter on average, we enter a danger zone where oceans become a marine wasteland. Cities are flooded, especially those coastal cities that already are at low levels in terms of sea levels. Um, we see those cities start to flood. We start to see natural disasters as a common thing. Um, um, and as the author mentions, these effects of climate change are alarming and their potential consequences. Um, the author gives um, a couple solutions to combat climate change. His biggest emphasis on how to combat climate change is energy efficiency. Um, if we didn't consume as much energy as we did, and we didn't waste it as wastefully as we do, we could reduce CO2 emissions dramatically over a couple years. Like I want to say, um, like 50 years, I believe he quoted. Yeah, by 2055. Um, some of the some of the ways that the author cited that we could reduce CO2 emissions was increase fuel economy from 15 miles per gallon to 30 miles per gallon. That will reduce CO2 emissions by like 2 billion tons. Um, just better um, energy efficient buildings and generation of energy. Um, stopping all coal, um, all power produced by coal, stopping that completely, um, and mixing our energy resources to cleaner ones, as well as reforestation. So, what were the author's main objectives? I would have to say his main objective was to inform people about the consequences of a hotter planet, and explaining exactly at at each level what the consequences will be. So at 1 degree Celsius, these are the consequences at 2 degrees Celsius, and so forth. I think he accomplished um, his objective because he gave the information necessary to convince someone that this is a real problem. Before reading the book, I was vaguely aware about climate change and its effects and how the glaciers were melting, but reading this book was more informative than just your average type of knowledge. As I mentioned before, my knowledge before was just average, but this book kind of made me understand more concisely the effects that we will experience if we continue in changing our environment's climate as drastically as we are. So the author definitely reinforced my notion that climate change is bad, but went beyond that and informed me more about its effects. Would I recommend this book? I would definitely recommend this book. I think, as I mentioned before, it will give you a better sense of how consequential climate change can be, and its real and true effects, and just how fast and quickly it's occurring, and how we need to change our energy consumption and how we use energy. So yeah, overall I like the book and I would definitely recommend.